Ever heard of a horse that can outsmart, well, a sorcerer? Get ready, because today we're diving straight into the heart of Iranian folklore, where the magic is real, and even the horses, well, they've got a knack for trickery.
Sounds intriguing.
It is. Welcome back to Iranian Things, episode 128. I'm Kiyu Mars.
And I'm Ten Naz. Always a pleasure to be back, exploring the myths and legends and sometimes even the cryptids of Iran.
Exactly. And for those just joining us for the first time, we really love to kind of dig into those lesser-known stories, the ones that don't always make it into the history books. But they tell us so much about a culture's values, beliefs, imagination even.
I agree. And today's tale is a perfect example of that. The steed of cloud and wind, as be Abra or bad, in Persian, filled with adventure, cunning, and of course, you guessed it, a magical horse. But it also gives us these little glimpses into that battle between good and evil, the importance of loyalty, and how sometimes cleverness can be more powerful than just brute force.
Absolutely. And while you're listening, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment, too. We always enjoy reading what you think about the stories we share. But now let's dive into this epic tale. It all begins in a realm, well, not quite like ours, a place inhabited by the divs.
Now, the divs are fascinating creatures, aren't they? You can think of them as these powerful, often mischievous beings, similar to like jinn or demons in other mythologies. They live in this separate world, sometimes interacting with humans, but always with that kind of air of otherworldly power about them.
Yeah, and in this realm, the king of the divs possesses something truly extraordinary, the Rakhsh, a magical horse unlike any other. This isn't just your average horse, you see. The Rakhsh can understand and speak. It's got this almost like supernatural awareness of danger. And, well, it's got a few more tricks up its sleeve, too.
It's true. What's really interesting about the Rakhsh, though, is that it's more than just about magical power, you know? There's this element of wisdom, of guidance that comes with it. You'll see as we go through the story how the Rakhsh is almost like a protector, a mentor to the young prince.
Absolutely. And speaking of the prince, he stumbles onto something quite incredible one day. The Rakhsh, you see, she's very secretive about her pregnancies, always finding these hidden spots away from prying eyes. But the king's young son, he happens to be in the right place at the right time, witnessing the birth of this magnificent foal.
Yeah, that's a key moment, isn't it? Because it kind of sets the stage for the whole conflict. The prince is immediately drawn to the foal, forms this deep bond, and raises it in secret. But as you can imagine, this doesn't sit well with everyone, especially when the king decides to remarry.
The stepmother. And this is where things get really interesting, right? We're not dealing with just some monster in a faraway land, but with that very human emotion, jealousy. Not only is the prince, her stepson, but he also has this incredible magical horse.
Exactly. And that jealousy, it pushes her to some pretty extreme measures. She wants to get rid of the prince and claim the Rakhsh for herself. But what makes it even more, I guess you could say twisted, is that she goes and asks a sorcerer for help, someone skilled in the darker arts.
It's a recipe for disaster, right? This sorcerer comes up with not one, not two, but three wicked schemes to try and eliminate the prince. The first one involves, well, something you definitely wouldn't want for dinner: salty food and a pitcher of water that's actually filled with snakes.
Now, snakes, they're interesting, aren't they? In a lot of cultures, snakes can be seen as symbols of both healing, transformation, but also danger and deception. Here, they're obviously being used to represent the stepmother's bad intentions.
And thankfully, the Rakhsh is always a step ahead. It warns the prince, saving his life from that slithery plot. But this stepmother, she doesn't give up that easily.
Oh, no, not at all. Her second attempt is even more, cunning. She tries to trick the prince into falling into this pit, a pit that's filled with weapons, cleverly hidden under a rug. It's a classic trap, Really highlights that theme of deception that runs through the story.
But again, the Rakhsh senses danger and warns the prince just in time. It makes you wonder, does the prince ever, suspect his stepmother? Does he really understand just how much danger he's in?
That's a good question. The story doesn't really say if he's aware of her intentions, but you can definitely feel that underlying tension, that threat always lurking beneath the surface. And it's through his bond with the Rakhsh that he's able to navigate these dangerous situations.
Yeah, just when you think things couldn't get any worse, the stepmother comes up with her most elaborate scheme yet. This time she involves a local mullah, a religious scholar, in her plan. Together they decide to frame the prince, make it look like he attacked her.
That adds a whole new level of complexity, doesn't it? It's not just physical danger anymore. It's about manipulating how people see things, twisting the truth. It raises questions about power, about social hierarchies, and how easily those in authority can be, well, manipulated.
But you know who sees right through it all? The Rakhsh. Knowing what's about to happen, it warns the prince. Even goes as far as arranging a secret system of signals, using its neighs to alert him at specific moments.
It's like something straight out of a spy movie, isn't it? That level of planning, the communication between the horse and the prince, it really shows how deep their connection is. The Rakhsh isn't just reacting, it's strategizing, showing a level of intelligence that's almost, well, human.
Okay, so picture this. The prince goes to the mullah's school, knowing there's danger, but trusting the Rakhsh's signals. He hears the first neigh. That means the plot is in motion. Then another one, they're about to give the Rakhsh water, most likely poisoned. And finally, that third heart-stopping neigh, the signal that they're going to eliminate the Rakhsh.
Wow, the suspense it's almost unbearable. That scene is just brilliant in the way it builds tension. Each neigh brings the prince closer to this horrifying realization.
And in that moment, the prince doesn't hesitate. He jumps into action, striking the mullah and stopping him from carrying out the plan. He races back home, just in time to save the Rakhsh from certain death.
What an escape. It really shows the prince's bravery, the Raksh's loyalty, but it's also a turning point in this story, right? Now the prince knows he can't just sit back and wait. He has to take control.
Exactly. He comes up with this daring plan to escape from all the deceit and danger. He convinces his father to let him take the stepmother for a ride on the Rakhsh before they kill it. Makes it seem like a final act of mercy.
Of course, it's all part of his escape. And as they're flying through the air, leaving the Div's realm behind, the prince abandons the wicked stepmother, leaving her to her fate. Can you imagine the feeling of freedom he must have felt, escaping from all those who wanted to harm him?
Wow. But their journey doesn't end there, though. They've escaped one danger, only to enter a whole new world, the human world. And that's where our story continues.
We left off with our prince and his amazing Rakhsh, soaring off into the human world, leaving all that treachery of the Div's realm behind. A whole new chapter for them both.
It really is.
Yeah.
Makes you think about that whole idea of crossing the threshold, you know. It's a common theme we see in so many myths and stories. Like they've stepped into this completely different reality with all these new challenges and opportunities. But this time, it's not sorcerers or snake-filled pitchers. It's a whole new set of rules, social expectations.
Absolutely. And this is where the prince's cleverness really comes in. He knows he can't just walk around as a div prince. He has to blend in, right? He needs to adopt a human guise. And, who helps him with this transformation?
The Rakhsh.
The Rakhsh, of course.
Of course. It's amazing how the Rakhsh is so much more than just like a way to get around. It's this like all-knowing, powerful companion, almost like a guardian angel, but with magical abilities, of course.
Right. And it makes you think about the symbolism, What does the Rakhsh really represent? Is it simply a magical creature?
Mm-hmm.
Or could it be something deeper, something more, a manifestation of maybe the prince's inner strength, his intuition, or even maybe like his connection to something bigger than himself? It's definitely something to think about as we continue with the story.
I like that. Well, disguised as a human now, our prince stumbles upon a scene that feels like something out of a fairy tale, almost. He finds himself in this beautiful garden where he meets the king's daughters.
Ah, yes. The romance part of the story. The prince is, immediately taken with the youngest daughter, and it seems the feeling's mutual. But winning over a princess, it's not always easy, especially when you're a prince in disguise.
Right. And what's interesting here is how marriage is viewed in this society. It's not just about, royal lineage and alliances. There's this element of choice. And this is where the tradition with the apples comes in.
Yes. The king, he gives each of his daughters an apple.
Mm-hmm.
And they're supposed to throw it towards the man they want to marry. Can you imagine that? Such a bold way to show your affection, to make a choice.
That's really...
In front of everyone, no less.
It is. And the youngest princess... Well, she throws her apple straight to our disguised prince, like a scene from a romantic comedy almost. Definitely shakes things up a bit, I'm sure.
You can say that again. And I bet the king wasn't too thrilled about his youngest daughter's choice. I mean, this prince, he's just seemingly a commoner to him, a nobody in the eyes of the court. But the king, being a man of his word, agrees to the marriage. Maybe a little reluctantly, though.
So we have this wedding ceremony, but it's small, Very low-key. It makes you wonder if it's like a hint. Foreshadowing, maybe. Like, okay, something else is going to happen here. And of course it does. The real test is about to begin. Remember, the king has these two other daughters who have married his ministers.
And now all three sons-in-law are going to be put to the test. It's like a classic element in so many folk tales. The hero, the young hero, has to prove himself worthy, often through a series of challenges. And in this case, the challenge is a hunting competition.
Right. Now you might think, okay, a hunting competition. How hard can it be? But this is a king we're talking about. He wants to see who has the skills, the courage, and maybe even the cunning to potentially be his heir.
And to make things interesting, or maybe to set the prince up for failure, who knows, he gives his two minister sons-in-law the best horses in the land. But our disguised prince, he gets stuck with this really unimpressive horse, almost as if the king's saying, well, we'll see how you do now.
Oh, yeah. I bet he was thinking, let's see how this commoner measures up against my trusted ministers. But he clearly underestimated our prince. Because remember, our prince has a secret weapon, the Rakhsh.
Exactly. And here's where the magic comes back in. With a simple but powerful ritual burning one of the Raksh's magical hairs, the prince calls upon his magnificent steed. Can you imagine what those other sons-in-law must have thought when this incredible creature just appeared?
I can only imagine their faces. They show up with their fancy earthly horses, and here comes this prince, seemingly out of nowhere, riding a creature of myth and legend.
It's brilliant, isn't it? It shows you how looks can be deceiving, and that true power often lies, well, beneath the surface.
For sure, and the Rakhsh doesn't disappoint. The prince, with the Rakhsh, excels in the hunt, outperforms everyone, but he takes it a step further. He uses his wit, the Raksh's speed, to trick his rivals into being branded, like marking them as his servants.
Brains over brawn. Classic. He adapts, strategizes, uses what he has to his advantage. He's not just a skilled rider, he's thinking ahead, a real tactician.
And you know the best part. He makes sure his wife, the youngest princess, gets the best game from the hunt, while his rivals end up with, well, let's just say, not the best cuts of meat. It's like he's subtly showing them who's boss, showing that he can provide and take care of his loved ones.
It's a great detail, adds another layer to the story. It's not just about winning, it's about proving his worth. As a husband and maybe even a future leader, he's playing the long game here, setting the stage for what's to come.
Yeah, and then the next morning, the real shock. Imagine waking up and finding this magnificent palace, grander than your own, built right next door. And guess who owns it?
Well, our prince, of course. Seems he's been quite busy while everyone was sleeping, but instead of, revealing who he really is, he plays it cool, comes up with this clever scheme. He pretends to be looking for runaway servants who happen to be branded, remember. Do you see where this is going?
Oh, it's all coming together now. That branding during the hunt wasn't just a prank or to show off. It was all part of his plan, leading up to this big reveal.
It was. And the king, curious, orders everyone to be examined for these brands. And guess what? Who turns out to be the branded servants? The two minister sons-in-law. The king is furious. He's been completely outsmarted.
The tables have turned. Completely. The king sees the truth about his deceitful sons-in-law, and he recognizes the prince's intelligence, his worth.
Yeah.
So he disinherits them.
Justice prevails. The arrogant and deceitful are brought down, and the humble, the clever are lifted up. But it's not just about punishing the bad guys, right? It's about recognizing true potential.
Right. And the Rakhsh, once again, plays a key role. With its help, the prince transforms back into his true form, revealing his div origins. He's no longer a commoner in disguise. He's a prince, a hero, someone worthy of respect and admiration.
A powerful transformation, both physically and symbolically, right? The prince sheds his disguise, embraces who he really is, steps into his rightful place. And it's all thanks to the Rakhsh, that magical creature that has guided and protected him all along.
It really is a great story. But what's fascinating is that it doesn't just end there. There's something more, a deeper meaning that we need to explore. We've come a long way, haven't we? From that realm of the divs all the way to the human world. We've seen our prince transform from a fugitive, someone being hunted, to a true hero. But like with all good folk tales, the magic goes beyond just the plot. There's always this layer of symbolism that gives the story so much more depth.
That's what makes these deep dives so interesting, right? We're not just retelling a story. We're kind of like uncovering these hidden meanings, these timeless truths that people have connected with for generations.
I agree. And in this story, The Steed of Cloud and Wind, that symbolism is everywhere. In the characters, in the objects, even the setting. And I think one of the most powerful symbols is the Rakhsh. It's more than just a magical horse, wouldn't you say?
Oh, definitely. Think about it. The Rakhsh has all this power, but it also represents wisdom, loyalty, and this deep understanding of both the human and the dim worlds. It guides the prince, it protects him, helps him get through all these dangerous situations, and in the end, it plays a huge role in his transformation.
It's almost like the rock represents the prince's, like, higher self,
Mm.
you know,
Ah,
his intuition, or that inner voice that we all have that tries to guide us towards our true potential, that force that helps us see through lies, make good choices, and in the end, overcome all the challenges we face.
I like that interpretation. It speaks to that human need we all have, that desire for guidance, for something, for a connection to something, something bigger than ourselves. It makes you wonder if the story is also about finding that strength within us, that Rakhsh within that can help us overcome our own obstacles, our own personal challenges.
Yeah. And notice how the prince, he relies on his own cleverness, but also on the Raksh's magical abilities. It's like this partnership showing how important both human effort and maybe, just maybe, a touch of fate or divine intervention can be.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And the prince's journey to the human world, it's like a metaphor for self-discovery. He leaves behind everything he knows, goes through all these trials, and comes out stronger, wiser, more himself in a way.
That's a classic hero's journey, isn't it? The call to adventure, facing challenges, transformation, and finally, the return, but changed. And in this story, the Raksh isn't just a companion. It's part of that whole process of change, reminding us that we're not alone in our journeys, that there are things both inside and outside of us that can guide us, support us.
It's true, and it brings us back to why these ancient stories are so powerful. They entertain us, sure, but they also give us these incredible insights into what it means to be human. They remind us of important values, loyalty, courage, intelligence, and they encourage us to look for that strength within, that rash within, to help us deal with life's complexities.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the Div's realm to the human world. We've explored the steed of cloud and wind and all its layers of meaning, all the symbolism.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to check out our playlist. We've got a whole collection of Iranian folktales, myths, and even some cryptid adventures. You won't want to miss them.
And as always, we love hearing from you. What stood out to you in this episode? Did you see something different in the rash, a different meaning? Let us know in the comments.
Before we go, though, one last thing to think about. If the Rakhsh represents something more, what about the prince's disguise? Could that be a symbol too? Maybe it's about the masks we all wear or about finding our true selves. Something to ponder, isn't it?
It is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Iranian folklore. Until next time on Iranian Things.